Okay, so here with Martin Black. First question is, what's your name and where are you from?
Martin Black, Bruno, Idaho.
Okay, what is your experience in working on ranches and or feedlots, and especially doing day work or hiring day workers?
Well, I've kind of been on all ends of it. I grew up on a family ranch, worked on some big outfits in Nevada, which had private feedlots. Worked in a sale yard for a little bit, but I had a management position on the one big ranch. Worked for several different ranches when I was young. But yeah, they had different types of operations. A lot of it involved feeding in the winter, and I've been an owner operator on a ranch. I operate my own ranch now. I've done horse training for hire, traveling around contract colt starting, and operated a training operation out of my place at different times, and been a clinician the last 15 years, more or less, traveling around doing clinics around the world. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, all right, very good. What was your first job like working on a ranch or feedlot? Obviously, you said you grew up working on your own family one, but maybe hit a little bit on that, but then especially your first job working outside of home, working hiring on for someone else, leaving home, I guess.
Well, as a young child, I was riding on the family ranch, and I'm talking under 10 years old, and there were no fences between us and the neighbors. And so, I mean, when I was like 12 years old, I'd take a pack horse and go to the neighbors and work with them on getting our own cattle back. So as far as working off the ranch, that's a little bit like working for the neighbors. But when I was 14, I was actually on the payroll for a guy for the summer, of course, because I was still in school. And the following summer, same thing. But when I was 17 and graduated high school, I actually left home and went to Nevada and then on to California, and kind of bounced around on different ranches, kind of working for the people I wanted to work for, and get around the people I wanted to work for on the horsemanship and the ranching part of it. And then it just kind of worked from there. By the time I was 30, I kind of had my own operation going, and kind of back to what we just mentioned on the previous question.
Okay, very good. Very good. All right. What are some of the skills that you would expect someone to have if you were hire them to work for you? And like I said, in this, we're kind of targeting the TQA, kind of the forklift certification. What would be some of the skills required on their horsemanship, stockmanship, roping? There's some of the stuff like you have work ethic, integrity, a lot of character type stuff. It's kind of hard a little bit they should have that, and I love what you have there. You have work ethic, integrity, come prepared, knowledgeable about the job. But as far as back to the TQA forklift certification, to be safe and efficient with some of the horsemanship, stockmanship, roping, if you were going to hire someone, what would be kind of the basic skill level that you would expect if you're hiring someone? A lot of people, it's $150 to $200 for day work. If you were going to hire them to show up with their horse to do a job, what would you expect?
Well, obviously the cowboy skills, and be well mounted. So obviously there's some horsemanship skills, whether they're riding your horses or their own. And cattle handling skills, roping skills, all that. But today's world, you can't get to work without, a gooseneck and some equipment involved. And quite often it's feeding and fencing. And so it's you could have a really top cowboy that would burn the clutch out in your truck and couldn't repair a fence and everything. And I would rather have the guy that wouldn't tear up the equipment and could maintain the ranch as a whole, or at least patch a hole in the fence if you rode by it, than have a guy that was a top roper and everything. So it really needs to be a balance there of kind of being able to fill in on some of the other necessities in this modern world. I mean, years ago we'd leave camp a horseback and come back, and none of this was part of the equation. But not many outfits like that anymore. So you got to have some maintenance man abilities and some equipment abilities and stuff besides just being a cowboy.
Oh, that's good. And I think that's what we're trying to work through here. If you hiring someone to work for you, the fun ranching part, I heard several guys say about 90 or 95% is all the as my brother would say, the sexy cowboy stuff. The other 90 to 95% is the fencing and the haying and all the other stuff that you just said needs to be done. And we in this program we still focus on that, but kind of in relation to TQA and the industry certification, more contract labor. So if I hire someone to lay the floor in my house, to lay the tile, he's a tile guy. If I hire someone to come shoe my horse, I'd expect the horses to get shod, So if you're hiring someone not to come work for you, you're paying him $200 a day to specifically get a job done with your cows. So you're giving him just he's showing up for one day for day work. Because what's happened is there's a lot of these ranchers that, that one guy that you said, he's a mechanic, he's all the different things that they need to do. If you're only hiring one guy and only 10 to 5% on a little farming ranching outfit is the fun cowboy stuff, you need that guy that can be an irrigator and a farmer and all of those different things. And so what happens is a lot of these ranchers, they have the one guy that can do everything, and it's easier to just hire some day workers, 4 or 5, 6 to get the work done with your cows. And that's what we're trying to do through TQA. Okay, if you show up and I'm paying you $200 for today, what would be your expectation if a guy shows up with his pickup and trailer and you're paying him $200 a day to get your job done, worked with the cow? So what would be those expectations?
Well, again, the horsemanship, the roping, the stockmanship. But if he gathered the cattle and put them in the field and the gate was, not adequate to keep them closed, and he didn't fix the fence to keep the cows in the field, what's the point of having him gather the cows? I mean, I get what you're saying. We need the cowboy skills, yes. But cowboy skills alone, and I'm not talking irrigating and doing all the changing the oil in the tractor and all that. I'm not talking that. I'm just talking for him to get to work, he needs a vehicle, whether it's his or mine, and he has a flat tire or a bearing goes out or something. He's got to be able to rig it together and still get to work or get home or get your cattle trailered from the neighbor's back, whatever the job is. And if he does put the cattle in a corral or a fence, he needs to make sure it's secured. And to me, if we can't kind of cover all those bases, it doesn't matter how good a cowboy he is. Cows are going to get out of the field. He can't get home from the neighbors because, he's not mechanically inclined enough. So to me, that part of the equipment and the fencing, I'm not talking somebody that's going to go out and rebuild the fence for me. I'm talking a cowboy that doesn't have the wherewithal to make sure that the gate is closed good.
Okay. So on horsemanship, we'll start with horsemanship. What would be their horsemanship? What would you expect? Back to the forklift certification. They're safe and efficient. We'll just say horsemanship. What would be, you said have horsemanship skills. What would you expect someone to show up? What should they be able to do with their horse? Because that's the focus of TQA, back to the forklift certification. You're safe and efficient. So what would be some specific things on horsemanship that you would expect for someone to show up with the horse? What should they be able to do with their horse?
Well, depending on what the job is, let's say we're branding calves and he shows up on a colt that's never been roped off of. If he's handy enough that he can take a colt, the first time being roped off of and fit out right in with the rest of the crew, okay. But if he doesn't have those roping horsemanship skills, and here we are, in a horse training situation, and he can't get the cattle caught, that's not what's effective and efficient. So, if it depends on the job that we're talking about. If we're just gathering and trailing cattle and he has a decent enough horse, he has the horsemanship skills to get that job done, that's fine. Doesn't have to be a top bridle horse. He just has to be able to get the job done on that horse. And, he might not do it 100% because he's on a greener horse, or maybe an old spoiled horse, or something that doesn't have enough gas, an old burnout crippled horse or something. So it's being able to compensate for whatever you need to on your horsemanship skills to be effective and efficient.
Okay, good. So obviously, if I'm hiring you for day work, the focus is the cows, right? We're doing something with cows, and you've already hit on the gate and all the other things, but there's a job that needs done with the cows. Yep. So what would be the skill level if someone shows up for that? The horse, you got to be able to do the job with the cows. What would be some skills that you would say, okay, they have stockmanship skills where they can get the job done, whether you're, gathering or sorting or branding, or what would be some of the stockmanship skills you would expect?
Well, again, it's going to vary on things, but again, it comes back to being able to be effective and efficient. Now, if you got 2 or 3 good hands, that can be in the key positions, and you just need a couple more warm bodies to kind of fill the holes, bring up the drag. You might not have as high of expectations for these guys, but if you're sending a guy out there, say, to do it by himself, he might need to be a lot handier, to get the job done. Again, it comes back to the effectiveness and the efficientness of the job that you're asking them to do. And again, you could get by with maybe a beginner, if he can just find his way home and stay safe and plug a hole, on a low level, you might have a place for that person. But that wouldn't be the person you'd want to, hire a day worker for 2 weeks to get your cattle gathered, out of rugged country. So it varies. But again, what the effectiveness and the efficientness of what you're expecting out of them.
Okay, good. Nope, very good. Very good, very good. Number 5, if you were hired to do day work for someone, what would be your checklist the day before? As a day worker?
Yeah,
this is you that just got hired for day work, and you're going to show up to get paid. Right now, the going price is $150 to $200 a day. So that's what you're getting paid to go work for someone. What's your checklist the day before?
Well, to try to be on the safe side of being prepared to get the job done, please the employer, punching the time clock. I'd want a little understanding of what the job is going to be, so I can maybe have the proper horse show up on the proper horse. If we're sorting cattle and I had a horse that was better to sort cattle, that would be, my pick. If we was roping, I'd maybe want an adequate horse to rope off of. Or if we're just gathering cattle, well, I'd want the one that travels out the best, maybe. So selecting the right tool for the job, basically the right horse for the job, would be good for me and the employer. Win-win. Obviously make sure your truck and trailer's fueled up, tires aired up the night before, or at least get up early enough in the morning that you can do an equipment check, so you're not delayed halfway there. You're changing a tire because the tire was low, things like that. Again, if you're need certain ropes or certain, whatever you need to do the job, maybe maybe have your certain ropes or fencing pliers or whatever it might be to show up. And I'd be there early. I was just saying that early's on time is late, and late is unexcusable. And that's something that I try to be prompt. I'd rather be 5 minutes early with somebody than a minute late. That cover everything?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's right. The kind of stuff that these guys need to hear. I really like how you included the right horse for the right job. On your thing here, you have dogs, no dogs. I think that's a big one. You have wet deer, food. I think that's, one of the things. The guys in the valley here, and you go up, you're climbing altitude. You go up to Jordan Valley or some different places, and boy, you can always unzip your coat or take your scarf off, or you're probably the coldest you've ever been different times is when you were underdressed and went somewhere, probably, huh?
Yeah. I've been in, way below zero, more than 150 below zero with the chill factor. I was comfortable because I had the right clothes, but, I've been in 40 degrees humid and freezing my butt off. And, so it's, the clothes is an important thing. And if you with people that need food and water, I've learned to go without it, but just being prepared. That's what I'm saying. Check all the boxes. What are we going to do? Are we going to be gone for a week? Okay, that's a day work deal that's going to last a week, and you're not coming home. Your bedroll and some groceries and all the thing you're going to need to provide for yourself, not just in the cow work, but that's all part of being ready to do the job.
No, good stuff. And that's one of the things we're trying to incorporate into day work or ranch work is training horses and selling horses. So I think that's so important to line the right horse with the right day. Good day to bring an outside horse, and if you can bring, like you said there, maybe you can switch. There's days where you could bring, you're close to the trailer and there's a lot of work, and if you're riding outside horses or selling horses, there's some days you can ride 2 or 3 horses, right? And so you can almost load your trailer sometime and get a bunch rode, or if it's that bridle horse that there's more rope in the horse you're selling. And so, no, good stuff there, right? Because you've done a little bit of all that, right, Dad? You've had the colts that are barely going, and you've had some horses that maybe you're getting ready to go show, or some bridle horses you're selling. And so part of this TQA is riding outside horses and then riding your own horse that you're getting ready to sell. And so really matching the right horse to give them the right experience. And that's what we're trying to do partly, Dad, is it's hard to just, I'm going to support a family and make a living or whatever doing just, mixing these enterprises, where we're using our horses in implementing an equine business into our cattle business. And so you've spent your whole life doing that, where you're not just making dollar bills with your cows, you're training and selling horses too. And so that might speak to that just a little bit. You've done that your whole life and written books on it, and the opportunity to train and sell horses as you're working your cows, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing that maybe a lot of people might not have experienced and might not know is they want every horse to be their best and sell for a top dollar and everything. But when I was growing up, we had our good horses that we tried to kind of pamper a little bit and keep them, giving them good experiences so they became good rope horses and good bridle horses, good cow horses or whatever. But in order to do that, that's kind of like having your town truck, and you want to keep it nice. You don't want to be abusing it. You don't want to be tearing it up. Well, the only way to do that is to have a work truck. So some of these horses, they're just, they're going to go do the dirty work. And if they get tired and get kind of heavy on the bridle or whatever, okay, at least you're not wrecking your good horse. So you have these horses, and they're kind of the tougher ones. Maybe they're, for whatever reason, they didn't make the A string. They're not going to be your top horses. Maybe genetically, maybe you've messed them up, whatever. but they're your B string. So if there's any job that's going to abuse the fine tuning of the horse, you take your B string to do that. Long days, tough days, working tough cattle. I mean, quite often you come in on the end of a long day and you get to the gate and you got to sort some cattle, before you come into the field. And here your horse is tired. He's been hours and hours and miles, and you still got to work cattle. Well, that's not a job you want to do for your potential top bridle horse, So those are the kind of days that I would pick something out of the B string or the C string even. And if you got to drag them around to get a cow turned, okay, that's kind of what they're for. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. And what I think is funny now, and when we grew up, we rode for a lot of ranchers. Those horses don't make the cut, and the majority of the horses, the little cute little cutting horses that you lope around for 15, 20 minutes and they just roll over and let you do whatever you want. Those ones that you're taking a 50, 60 mile turn and riding from daylight till dark, those horses have a little more grit and a little tougher, right? And so I think that's what's kind of changed is they have a purpose. They have a job. That's your tough horse, your tough dog, tons of energy, tons of grit. They may be a little bronky and a little tough. They're tougher, and they're not going to lope them around for 30 minutes and then be your velvet little cutting horse. But those suckers, right?
Well,
they go all day.
That little bit of thing they have first thing in the morning is what gives them a little extra on the other end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you've got them all desensitized and mauled and everything, and they leave in the morning with their ears looking like Eeyore, about halfway through the day, they're trying to tell you how abused they are, and it's hot, I'm thirsty, it's whine, and I'm talking about the horses, not the people, and you can't get that extra little bit out of them. But on the other hand, if you kind of on making the bridle horse, kind of keep that horse, you pamper them, you give them all the best opportunities, the shorter days, the more cow work, the more roping, the more whatever. And, they're kind of more on the privileged end of things, and they get the good experiences basically, and save the bad experiences for your B string.
All right. Sounds good.
That's how you make bridle horses. If getting the job done is a priority too. If you're just strictly in a horse training deal and, you don't have to get the cows working the cows is to benefit the horse only. Okay, that's a different environment than we're talking about here though.
Gotcha. Okay, good stuff. So I lots been said. I was clearly the B string growing up, huh? Will was the A string.
Well, the cowboys have to be an A string and a B string.
I was just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. All right. Top 10 cowboy rules. Things that you got your butt chewed for the most growing up. Biggest pet peeves. However you want to do that. I've interviewed other people and they said, yeah, partly the pet peeves, but part of these are safety deals too. You know what I mean? And so as you read through there, I'm sure some of it would be pet peeves that's kind of annoying when people do it. But I'm sure some of the things in there are really big safety things of what they should do and not do. But you've worked on a lot of ranches. You've been a lot of places. These are unwritten cowboy rules. So these are things that you could really get disqualified for, get your butt chewed. If you go into the cutting pen and you're not supposed to grab your horn and you go out and you get disqualified. And I think there's just so many things that, especially people that didn't grow up on ranches. Anyway, so yeah, go ahead. I'll kick you loose there. If you're going to help somebody, what are the top 10 unwritten cowboy rules?
Well, what I've listed there, again, is mostly safety. I'm really adamant about people getting a hold of the rope correctly with their thumb up before they ever get to the horn. And, a lot of people, especially if they've tied hard, you throw your loop, you don't turn your hand over, you pitch your slack. And if that's kind of what they're used to doing is getting their slack with their thumb pointed toward the hondu, that's not a good position to go to the horn to dally. That's how people lose thumbs. So regardless of whether you lose 2 feet, you lose your catch or everything, get your hand turned over so your thumb is pointed back to your coils or up. And that's something real important. And looking down at the saddle horn when you dally, a lot of people do it. A lot of people get away with it, but that's a good way to, the only way you see the horn is to take your hand to the left, which if that's going to take your horse to the left, now your horse is turning around in a circle to the left. And by the time you dally and things come tight, you don't realize that you just wrapped yourself up in a rope. That happens. It doesn't happen all the time, but it only has to happen once. You're in a pretty serious wreck, and maybe even have your horse in a pretty serious wreck. And he takes off bucking and he gets somebody else in a pretty serious wreck. So the potential for danger is just learn to look down at your stock and dally without looking at the horn. This not tying a horse to something solid, you see this all the time. Somebody ties a horse to some panels, and the panels may not even be secured. I mean, if it's a panel with good stout railroad ties, okay. But if that horse pulls and the panels kind of rattle and it scares him, and now he's taken this, say it's a round pin, and now it's shaped like a teardrop. And if there's other horses tied to it, it just creates a chain reaction. Now all the horses are scared that the fence is going to come up on top of them. So they're all pulling back. Just don't tie your horse to something that isn't solid. And, if you need to kind of secure him, I would just take a one wrap around the panel. But it's kind of a suggestion that they stay there. If they're really going to go, I'd rather have the horse get loose than to pull the crail over and get tangled up and tear things up and everything. So, but here's where hobbling and, there's other ways of doing stuff, but just, again, don't tie to something that isn't solid. Horse trailers are bad enough. It might be solid. They go to pulling back and the horse trailer rattles and scares them even more. So now they're pulling back on the horse trailer. And they're not going to get away necessarily, but again, a good stout post isn't going to shake and scare them like a horse trailer will. So bottom line is I would look for the most solid thing to tie them to. If I had a choice, I'd take a big solid post over the horse trailer even. I see a lot of people, they'll saddle their horse maybe and cinch them up good and tight, not move them, step up there and yahoo, and away they get going. That is a recipe for disaster if that's your habit, because a lot of horses, various things will make them cinchy. Maybe just a tight cinch. Maybe they got a wrinkle under the forearm under the cinch, and they take that first step and it pulls that wrinkle out and basically pinches their hide or pulls their hair or both, and that makes them tight and maybe buck, maybe fall over backwards, just anything, and that's just one of them things I learned. Every time you cinch your horse, step them up. Even if it's on the other end of the day, and I lift my saddle, they're back a little bit, I'm going to lead them forward a few steps. That's just a habit that you want to get into. I make very few exceptions. If I'm on a steep hillside or it's not handy to lead them up on the other end of the day, I might make an exception, but I think about it before I do. The habit that I've developed growing up and whatnot is it doesn't matter. When you tighten your cinch, move the horse up a step or two and make sure he's not bound up and going to fall over backwards or lay down or buck or anything like that. It's not that hard to do. And, in time, it'll save you. And it's looking behind you. It's just amazing how many people will go out into a new country. Strangers come into a new country and you can tell them, okay, there's that mountain range over there. There's that mountain range over there. You would think they could keep their bearings, but they're only looking forward. So, and you can do this driving a car too. And if you don't look and see what the country looks like behind you, you don't know what it's supposed to look like when you turn around and come home. So that's a simple thing, is look behind you once in a while. And you might be gathering cattle and you rode by some cattle and missed them. Well, there's, especially in brushy country. So you look behind you and look up on the hillside and there was a cow behind a tree you didn't see when you came by the first time. you get around on the other side of the tree, and there she is, laying in the shade on the backside of that tree you rode by. So look behind you if you're gathering cattle. Look behind you. Maybe you're getting ahead of the crew, but look behind you so you know what it looks like when you get ready to come home. As a boss, I learned if you're not going to do something, don't ask somebody else to do it. And I'm not talking about the ability. I'm talking about some job that cleaning out the truck. The cattle truck or something like that. Some dirty job that go chop weeds out of the scale before you ship or something. You get a lot more respect out of your crew if you got a shovel out there chopping weeds right there with them. Or you just go do it and they go, geez, I feel bad. I should come out there and help him. That's even more so because you didn't ask and they still got out there. But if you ask the crew to go chop weeds out of the corrals so you can work cows in there and you're sitting there watching them with a cold beer, in the shade, that's not a way to win friends and influence people. And that's they're not going to want to work for you doing that. But if you're right there with your sleeves up, you get a lot more respect. And being last, it is so annoying when you have to wait on the same person every day. I mean, somebody's got to be last. It doesn't have to be the same somebody. In other words, whatever happens, everybody might just be quicker than you. You're still on time, but you're still the last one in the trailer. And it's just one of them things that, okay, we can take turns being last, but don't hog it. Don't be last every time. If you really get, especially, if they're waiting for any long period of time. I mean, just being last to load your horse in the trailer when everybody's standing there, that's one thing. But, everybody's sitting there twiddling their thumbs going, is he going to come, out of the bunkhouse? He hasn't even caught his horse yet? No, that's again, that's not a good way to win friends and influence people. And this, knowing where other people are, you're out on a circle, maybe you're in an area where you can't see everybody, but you got to keep a sense of where everybody is. You might get up on a ridge and kind of sit there for 5 minutes until you can locate them. Or if you're in trees, brushy country, you might not even have any cows in front of you, but let out a war whoop every once in a while and let everybody else know where you're at. And if you hear some guy holler over there a quarter mile and the other guy holler over there a quarter mile and you kind of feel like you're all kind of together there, great. You got less chance of missing some cattle maybe. But what happens sometimes is you take some people out that not from around here, don't know this. They grab a little bunch of cows and they just take off to the corral or to the fence corner, wherever they're going. And then you kick cattle in to them, say they're in the bottom of the canyon, you kick cattle off the ridge down to the canyon to them, and they're already ahead of you. Well, that's not a very effective way to gather cattle. And on the other end of things, don't get too far behind. Maybe you had a little trouble and okay, you're behind, get them cattle to trot, try to make up that ground, or get up on a ridge with your cattle or something and try to let your presence be known. Let them know that you're behind. Holler, get visible, something. Maybe you can't control it, but at least you can try to announce that you're coming in late, and so they can drop back and help you. And if you're that other person, that's why you want to keep track of where your people are around you. You might need to drop back, or you might need to speed up a little bit. And you can only do what you can do, but be aware, basically. Riding in front of someone or doing their job. It's one thing if the grandkids are out there, you ride in front of them, but it's kind of a disgrace if you ride in front of somebody. Basically, you're saying you're not doing your job and I need to do it for you. And sometimes, people just haven't worked around a crew and they don't know any better, and they get impatient, and and a good hand might be pushing these cattle along, and one's kind of over there, and just about the time he's going to send his dog over there to kind of bump that bull up that's eating on the side over there, this guy just trots in front of him and goes over there and pushes this bull. That is a good way to lose friends and influence people. But if he's going to miss the bull, I would, rather than ride in front of him or go get the bull, I would get over there and kind of ride stirrup to stirrup, or maybe even say something, but make it pretty obvious that you got this job behind the cattle if they want to go over there to that bull. And if it's a person that doesn't know or anything, I just say, well, just go ahead and get that bull. I'll watch this position for you for a minute. But you really, in my opinion, you really got to have a good experience to cross over and do somebody else's job over there.
Those.
Don't let anybody handle your rope at a competition. This might not fit everybody, but story of my granddad's dad. He went to a roping competition, and he roped a steer, and his rope broke. So he retied the Honda and roped it again. But he got to looking later after the competition, and there was a strand cut in his rope. And before the competition, coincidentally, the guy that won the competition was looking at his rope and turned his back and apparently took a knife and cut one strand underneath the Honda, expecting the rope to break if he did catch, and that's exactly what happened. So there was a little dirty pool there. So anyway, that covers that list.
No, that's good. And I think some of those things there, all of them were really good, but some of those things like don't ride in front of someone and, always being last, some of those things just, you don't know. And in the normal society, just don't know how rude it is on the etiquette there. And so that's, that whole list was good. And so that's why we're trying to get a list here when people show up, at least they know that that was on the list that really frustrates people or things that you just don't do. So, no, that's good. What are the main things you took away from your mentors?
Like on the ranching part you're talking about, or the horsemanship.
Yeah. You've had a lot of good mentors kind of related towards working on ranches or feedlots, or it could be anywhere, I guess. Just what are some of the main things you took away from your mentors that have kind of shaped who you are, and maybe you'd like to pass on to the next generation, especially some of these kids that are young adults, adults, some of them that are, I guess they're all adults, but these guys that are going out into the workforce, what would be the main thing you took away that you'd like to pass on?
Well, again, I think, I can make a long list of, horse training tips or cattle handling tips or roping tips. But, that kind of goes without saying. I think what was lacking, it goes back to the work ethic and the integrity. If you say you'll be there at 8 o'clock, be there at 8 o'clock, or even be there at 7:45, ready to go. Your horse cinch is tight, your horse is saddled, ready to go. And work. So many of these people sit around and just kind of wait. My mentors were all good hands. The reason they were good hands, that's why they was my mentors, and I picked them, is because they were superior. But what made them superior hands is they had a work ethic. I know very few lazy people that are successful in the kind of things we're talking about. You gotta work. You gotta get out there. You gotta get the experience. Sitting in the house, whatever, that you don't get the experience. So those people without a work ethic, there's very few of them that just happen to be lucky, happy to have the natural talent, whatever, to become very handy. So again, everybody I know that I've worked with had a tremendous work ethic. That's how you get there. That's how you create the opportunities to learn all this stuff. Is you put in the overtime. It gives you more opportunity to learn.
Good stuff. Number 8, what are some things you would tell an inexperienced person starting out in the equine or ranching industry? So this is an inexperienced person starting out in the equine or ranching industry.
Well, I guess maybe one thing I'd say is, what the hell do you want to do this for? Because it's not Hollywood. It doesn't pay good compared to a lot of other careers. You'll get cold, you'll get hot, you'll get thirsty, you'll get hungry. It is adventurous, but it's not Hollywood. So, before they really invest too much into it, they need to know what they're getting into. I think that kind of covers all my stuff there. Again, the work ethic comes back to that. You need to have some staying power. If you're afraid of breaking a nail, you're in the wrong business here. You're going to get rope burns. You're going to get bucked off. You're going to, like I say, get hungry and cold, and all these things that aren't fun. That's all part of it too. It's not all branding calves and watching your shadow and dreaming you're John Wayne.
No, that's good stuff. I mean, and obviously you've lived it, you've done it, and now part of your job is providing some education to people that might want to. And so I think you probably agree with that. And an inexperienced person is the grit, the the work ethic. But some of those guys, well, you could ask someone that's maybe a little smoother, right? Like you said, you don't have to necessarily go get kicked by the horse if you watch someone else and they say, hey, don't walk behind and get kicked. There's some things, back to what your mentors, some little tips, maybe in some of that with an inexperienced person, to buy a Martin Black DVD and maybe learn a few things, right? That's like, oh, that can save you years and years. Obviously, there's the stuff you got to figure out. But I think it's kind of crazy now, wouldn't you say, that there's quite a bit of information that can help you maybe skip a few steps as far as on the education part, you think?
That I could help people?
Just in general, as far as an inexperienced person, there's a certain level of work ethic, and I say the wallering to try to figure it out, but there's maybe ask someone there's some advice you could get from other people in entering, as far as, and you've hit on all of that as far as your mentors and
you mentioned something right there that I didn't mention, but it's another one, and surprise them, talk to them, make some noise, kick some dirt at them, something, let them know you're back there. And I knew that. And one time when I was in high school, I was in a hurry, and I kind of hurried over behind this horse and just touched him to move him over. He was a gentle horse, and he kicked with both feet and knocked me back. And it's like, well, that's, if you can see somebody do that, you don't have to make that mistake. I'd heard it, but it obviously didn't soak in well enough. And, it was one of those mistakes you make, and it ain't going to happen again. So, that's something that was just drilled into me from then on. And I warned people, I warned you guys growing up, don't be behind that horse. You can be there, but make sure they know. And if they're bothered by it, they don't want you in the blind spot. They'll try to turn around or do something, but they don't want to kick you. But just, there's just a lot of that stuff that you can learn from other people's mistakes.
All right, good stuff. What is the main thing you wish you would have learned earlier? What is the main thing you wish you would have learned earlier?
Well, it took me about till the time I was 35 or really 40 to learn to appreciate the patience, waiting on stuff, and not, I was so busy putting out fires, or like they say, you're too busy chopping wood to sharpen the axe. You're just running around crazy instead of kind of taking a little time and getting prepared and sharpening the axe, and now you can cut more wood. Well, I was just busy, and my horses suffered for it, and more of the horses than the people. And raising you kids is what really taught me patience, because I can't have high expectations of kids. They're not supposed to know some. It's one thing you hire a kid that's however old, 19 years old or 40 years old, it doesn't matter. And you kind of expect them to know something. You get a little snappy when they make a mistake or get in trouble and everything, but you can't do that with kids. But once I kind of learned to work with kids and have patience more. Well, then it kind of helped me to get more patience with my horses. And then when I started getting more patience with horses and cattle, with livestock, I'll say, then my horses started performing better. They started training better. They started having better luck with the cattle. I mean, it goes back to the whole EBH thing and the flight zone and all of that. There's just too much warrior when I was younger, and that's kind of the trait of most males, is they have too much warrior in them. And not that that's all bad, but you got to be careful how you place it.
Well, that's funny. You said 35 or 40. That's right where I'm
at. Can you relate to that?
40s. See, people, my face definitely looks older, but I would not want to go back to my 30s and learn all the crap over again to be like, it's funny you say that, 35, 40. It's like, oh, all right, slow down. It's like that horse at the end of the ride a little bit. So, yeah.
And kind of on that note, I kind of come to the conclusion, you know what, if we don't get it done today, there's always tomorrow. And if tomorrow doesn't come, what difference does today make?
It's good stuff. Yeah. There was another guy I was interviewing, and that was his big thing is, I can't remember if it was what he wished he would have learned earlier or from his mentors is, hey, especially in working cows, there's tomorrow, you know what I mean? Let's quit horses, cows, livestock. Let's come back tomorrow, you know what I mean? Let's the patience on some of those things. If fix it up and wait, come of those Tom Dorrance things, you know what I mean, instead of trying to make everything happen. But last thing, do you think there are benefits to the ranching lifestyle besides making millions and getting filthy rich or paying the bills? Do you think there's more to the ranching lifestyle than just a way to pay the bills?
Well, first of all, it doesn't really pay the bills. It's a poorer living from a financial standpoint. But as a lifestyle, I think it's one of the richest ones. You're around nature. You can work the family aspect into it. So you get to be with family, you get to be with animals, you get the outdoors, the mountains, the clean water, the blah blah blah. All of that you don't get going to the office. There's a lot of things, with other jobs that are unlike this. That's why people look forward to weekends and 5 o'clock and everything. And in this, it's like, we got a day off. What are we going to do? Well, hey, let's go brand some calves, or let's take a ride up and check that water gap or something. That's refreshing. It's if you enjoy your job and what you're doing and everything, every day's a day off.
No, that's
one of the biggest things.
No, that's good stuff. Real good stuff there. And then you got some other notes here that's pretty good. You've already said the early is on time is late, and late is inexcusable. You just got some wage notes. These are kind of some pearls of wisdom. I'll let you kind of read through some of these because these are dang sure some good stuff here. I'll let you go ahead and read through some of them. These are good.
You want me to read them?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it's just amazing how many people will interrupt the conversation. And I don't like to talk over the top of people. I have trouble listening when more people are talking. And so I just get quiet, and then they go on and on and on. And it's like, you're not going to give me a chance to talk, are you? What you have is more important than what I had to say. And that really annoys me. And these cell phones, a lot of times somebody will call me when I'm having a conversation, and if it's not an important call, I can call them back. In other words, I don't even want to take the call because they're interrupting the conversation. And the same thing when I'm talking to somebody, if they take that call and they're just chit-chatting about the weather and everything, I feel like, well, I guess what I had wasn't very important, so screw you, I'm just going to go off and do something else now. I guess the conversation's over. That annoys me. I'd much rather have someone responsible enough to admit they made a mistake than to make the mistake and not be responsible enough to admit it. And that's somebody out there working And I tell people the story about you shooting the window out of the truck with the BB gun. And that was this lesson exactly. Just admit your mistake. You're not going to get near as much trouble than you break something and then nobody knows it's broke. You kept it a secret, and then you go to use it and it's broke. Well, now you don't have time to fix it, and it's going to slow you down. It's just better to fess up to it. Not having to tell.
No, I think you've said that before, and I think it's good for these kids to learn. Kids, I keep saying, some of these are high school kids, some of them are college, but it's youth going out into the workforce. But I think sometimes people, you've said this before, just and you say, own your mistakes. Okay, my bad, sorry, won't happen again, and then learn from them. I think that's the biggest thing. Back to, I think that could fall in there, Dad. Probably one of the biggest things I would think probably you could tell someone inexperienced is you don't know. You're going to make mistakes, right? So when you do make the mistake, say, okay, that was my bad. Okay, what do I need to do different, right? Okay, do something different. You might even get kind of a butt chew, and then don't make the same mistakes, right? I think if you're inexperienced and you're doing anything new, you're going to make mistakes, right? And so own them and learn from them and try not to repeat them, right?
Yep. No, that's it. You got to be careful as a parent or employer. They say, oh, I'm sorry, I broke this. And, you just rip them a new, what and everything. It's like, well, we're not going to tell him, that we broke something. We'll just let him find it. No, if you broke it, that's all right. But now you got to fix it, replace it, whatever. That's the consequence. You don't need to add more to the consequence. Just let them, suffer their own consequence from their own mistake. There's a lot of value with that. So hiring people, not having to tell them what they need to do, that's a luxury. You just tell somebody, I need those cows gathered. Okay. You don't have to tell them how to do it. You just tell them the objective. They can make their own plan. That's really nice to say, wait, I need these 10 cold start. I'll be back at the end of the month. Fine. You show up at the end of the month, they're all going just like you would expect them to. That's great. But that's a luxury. People like that aren't. Usually they have their own business going.
That's no kidding.
Explaining the job, yeah, you could kind of expect that. Not everybody, or just to be specific. The person wants to be specific. What is my job exactly? Okay, and showing them the job. That's acceptable. If the first two things there don't play out, okay, fair enough. You need to take them out and talk to them and show them, but then they start tearing stuff up. They don't get the job done. You have to go fix their mistakes. Okay, we might tolerate that. Good help's hard to find. But then when you got to go back and do their job, why did you have them here in the first place? That's what's annoying is, you show up and you say, yeah, I know how to tile your floor. Come back tomorrow and it'll be done. And it's worse than if I'd done it myself. So it's like, God, now I got to tear this out and I still got to do it myself. And I can't reuse the material. That's what's really annoying.
That's good. Your last one here, Dad, I think it's a good way to wrap it up, is people that are going to be watching this and going out into the workforce. And you've made a comment of this. These people, whether they get the skills and they want to go get a job. And the tricky part is they have this mentality of, I need to get a job so I can make money. And they have a higher form on what they're worth. So I have this skill. Here's the money that I should be making. But the reality is, as an employer, you're hiring them. So they need to produce something to generate a cash flow so you have money to pay them, right? So like you said, I'm fine paying you $100 an hour if you're making me $200 an hour. But if you show up, you're not doing you're just showing up and you're punching a time clock and you're not producing something, or you're breaking what you did, that's where we have a problem. And I think this last sentence you have here is a good way of how it works in the real world, and how, like I said, a lot of people want a job without work. And then when they work, they don't do their job to ultimately produce a product for the guy that's paying them. So they're producing a product to make money so they can afford to pay him, right?
Yeah, there's an entitlement mentality today that didn't used to exist. At least to the extent that it does now. You know, I have a right to get minimum wage. Okay, so you're saying if you're going to work, you're entitled to whatever the figure is, $100 a day or so much an hour, whatever. All right, so I'll pay you $100 a day, just like you said. But by the time you get $100, or by the time I pay your taxes and insurance, you know, I'm in at more like $120 to $150. Now you've cost me, and if I got to provide equipment, you know, I had to pay to get a horse shod so you could ride, or you know, the wear and tear on the equipment or whatever. That's all your cost that I have to get to. Okay, so let's just say that you're actually costing me $150 that I would not have if I'd done the job myself. Okay, if I do it myself, you know, at the end of the day, things are going to get done, and whatever job we've done, I produced $200. Okay, so I made $50. So, or 500, it doesn't matter, pick whatever number you want. But if this person can't produce at least $150, I don't need him. But if he'll produce $200 or more, he can come back tomorrow. As long as he's making me money, he can come to work every day. I'm glad to hire him. But if I'm paying him 50, 150 is going to taxes and the government and all that, and he's producing anything less than that, what's the point? I can't afford him.
No, I think that's good. I think you hit on a lot of really good things there. I'm looking forward to putting this together, and kind of like I said, this would be things that high school, college kids would be going through. It's 11-week online class, and then interviewing the consumer that's ultimately going to be hiring these kids. Through TQA, we have some basic skills that we test them on, but all that other stuff is really what it takes at the end of the day. You may have, you know, I said like some cowboy skills. Well, what good is it if you don't show up to work or you break the equipment and all those other things? And so that's why we're really going through and interviewing. You know, we have the basic test, but this is really introducing the consumer or the producer, the guy that's going to be hiring them, to say, here's everything else you need to do. And so you covered a lot of good stuff there. So appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, and one of the things I tell my students a lot that are young and they're wanting to get going, and I tell them this a lot. I said, if you someday you want to have your business, I say, go work for someone else and help their business be successful. If you can't help someone else's business be successful, don't think you're going to jump out and do your own thing. And I see so many people, they skip that step where they've never helped someone else's business be successful. And I think there's the law of the farm, that the people that do it that way, they learn a lot on someone else's dollar. They learn the work ethic. They learn the integrity. They learn the grit. And I was a whining little brat most of the time growing up, but I did work for your business from 10 to 20, and it sucked, and I whined all the time, and I was probably a horrible employee. But at 20, when I got married and left, I was like, thanks, Dad. You taught me how to run a business. There wasn't a big, I worked for you. I worked for your business, and I didn't always have the best attitude, but you taught me everything I needed to do just in working for you for 10 years, you know.
No, that's a good point. If you can't contribute to somebody else's business, what are you going to contribute to your own business?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Thank you, sir. All right.
Yep. Catch you later.